And then we'll minimize that because that gets a little trippy. So how's everybody doing? Yeah. So were you able to find some audio for your lip sync?
Yes.
Yes. Maybe. Okay, no. If you have issues getting it, let me know. I kind of rushed that part at the end of the class last class period. It's actually pretty easy to get some audio off there. What I usually do is I record it with OBS, which is what I'm recording class with today. It's a free screen recording software. You can also use Audacity, but it has a hard time finding your stereo mix. And then you can like find some show on Netflix, record a section of that, and then if you're doing it with OBS, that's just going to save it as a video with the audio in it. And then you can take that into Premiere and trim it to what you want and then just export the audio. So I actually have 3 audio clips here. I'm kind of tossing around which one I'm going to do. Let's see if you can hear them. Let's see.
Saul lied to me about Kenny Loggins. Saul lied to me about Kenny Loggins. Saul lied to me about Kenny Loggins.
So they're all a little like, what? But
Robert got me something special because he knew I was right and he was wrong. Robert got me something special because he knew I was right and he was wrong.
Man.
You know, I feel like in the future someone's going to build a time machine to come back and stop this exact moment. You know, I feel like in the future someone's going to build a time machine to come back and stop this exact moment.
Don't judge me. I like Fuller House. Like that. Not ironically, right? So I got just a couple things, kind of short lines. These are shorter than probably what you were finding because it's easier to watch a demo of a shorter lip sync piece, right? Yours will probably be a little longer and have a little bit more context sort of built into it. But I'm going to pick one of these and I'm just going to lip sync that today in class. So first, before I jump into any of that, any questions, any issues you've had so far? Okay, this is actually way easier than you might think. Like, I think lip sync and facial animation is something that people get really intimidated by. I'm going to show you. Yeah, does anybody need the attendance sheet? Okay, so now it's working its way forward. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my character rig. I'm starting back from the initial rig that I had. And in my timeline, where I'm needing to work on most of this is going to be this mouth drawing layer, right? So before I jump into here and we do anything in Toon Boom, though, a reminder, I'm actually broadcasting on Zoom as well if you want to follow along that way. So before I do much with that, let's look up on V2L really quickly. Because I added something in the student resources folder. You'll also be able to find it up in ETSU, E3, the IGN classes, Greg, 2D animation resources. I put a link there. But in the students resources folder, there's or category or whatever, there's a link right here called lip sync. So these few pages right here are going to guide you through most of it. But this is the big thing that I wanted to pull up, right? These are the drawings we need to create on our mouth layer in order to do lip sync, sort of at its bare minimum, right? Now, you'll find a lot of examples of what are called phonemes. I spelled it wrong. Images. So if you look at phonemes or visemes, I think that's what it's called. You're going to start finding all these images like this. And this is sort of the way that a lot of people think about doing lip sync. So just to kind of give you a quick overview of this, I want you all to try something with me. Try to say the word puppy without letting your lips touch. Right? Yeah, can't do it, right?
There's a thing that ventriloquists do when they want to say the letter B, but it goes in their mouth. I don't remember what it is.
Yeah, I bet they're probably touching their bottom lip to their teeth, or something like. So the trick, the thing with this, visemes or phonemes, that they are also they're kind of a term that is used by like speech pathologists or speech therapists to explain the fact that your mouth and all of your speaking organs here have to hit a certain physiological shape to actually be able to create a sound, right? Try saying that without moving your tongue. Right? You can't do it. These are physical things that your face does, right? Or your mouth does, the back of your throat does. Some of them are very involuntary, right? So like the involuntary is not the right word, like sort of non-interactive, I guess. Like to make the like ah sound, really you just have to open your mouth and let the back of your throat vibrate, right? Right? But like the M, the B's, the P's, we have to stop air from coming out of our mouth and let that pop, right? Pop, right? And you can't do that unless your lips are touching. So when you see that, anybody else needing an attendance sheet? Did I miss anybody? Okay. So that's what we're usually talking about with these visemes, right, or phonemes. They actually are two slightly different definitions, but as an animator, I kind of use them interchangeably. Not real. But it's important to recognize that your mouth kind of has to hit these shapes to make that noise, right? The S sound, let's try that. How about, let's try sleep, like you're gonna say sleep. Now kind of feel where the corners of your mouth are when you're doing that. Kind of wide, right? And you put your teeth together and you're kind of hissing. Now, let's make that same S sound for soup. The corners of your mouth aren't as wide, right? So a lot of that is the your ability to predict the next sounds that you're going to be making, and you're in preparation of that, right? It's not that S for sleep and that S for soup is any different. It's just that your mind knows eventually I'm going to go to that ooh shape, and to make that ooh shape, the corners of my mouth have to go in, right? So this is really not a great example. Let's see if we can have visemes. See if we can just look at those. There we go. So the ones that you're going to, this is a good example. So these are some of the ones that I think you're probably going to see the most, right? And every list is going to kind of list it a little different. Like there's the open mouth, ah, e, I. Usually those are showing a little bit of teeth, right? O, like the hole, right? Hole. That's usually a bigger circular open mouth shape. And then there's the E shape, which is your teeth are usually a little closer together. Sleep, right? A lot of the consonants have a little bit of something happening with your tongue, but not all the time, right? The C, G, K, D, like all of those kind of look like the, and they can often be substituted for the E, right? So you can kind of get a little bit of that out of it. So a couple of others I'll pull out of here to recognize. The BPM, like the, all of those are, your lips are closed, you kind of made a seal. It's either because you're mom, right? You're like humming behind it and you're just gonna pop forth. Or you got that P's and that B, which is like you build up air in your in your mouth and let it pop forward, right? So there are a couple of times when your tongue kind of comes into play, and usually the letter T is involved in that, right? That, tooth. A lot of times L as well, love, right? You have to use your tongue to make those words. So the other one I really want to point out is the F and the V. That's the one where you kind of bite your bottom lip. Or Virginia, forever. So these are just things that you need to know that like while you're trying to make your character make sounds, you're going to have to hit some of these shapes. So that link I shared with you may be a little misleading, right? Because when we're looking at all these vizzings, this is the way most people usually talk about facial animation. You may think that what this is just another vizzing list, and this is the shape for A, and this is the shape for B, and this is the shape for C. Unless if you look at that and you realize, wait, that makes no sense at all, right? Like that doesn't look like B, right? And that doesn't look like A. So this is the way Toon Boom. You don't have to do this, but this is the way Toon Boom recommends you consider your mouth shapes, right? Because instead of hitting all those vizzings, what you have in here is sort of the entire progression of your mouth opening and closing, both in the narrow and the wide position, right? A, B, C, D are all your mouth opening and closing wide, right, with the corners of your mouth wide. And then E, F, G is sort of your narrow positions, right? Maybe it's the F, the oo, or the sort of the narrower E shape. And then the X is your lips closed, right? Anything extra, I guess A kind of is too. A looks smiling. So we can look down here and see where we're going to use most of these, right? Our A pose, we're going to use them as MBPs, H, maybe. I don't know what they're talking about with H there. Your B pose is going to be the S, B's, J's, I, K, T. C pose, A and E. The D pose is sort of the louder A and E sounds. E is going to be the O. F is the U and the O. G is the F and the PH. Right? And then X is silence or undetermined sound, right? So that one is, you know, this is sort of your neutral, right? Where do you want your character's neutral to go back to? So this is the shapes we're going to have to make at the bare minimum in order to get an animation done. Yes?
Is there something like this in Maya?
Not like this. No. When you're animating, well, let me back up. There is, not built into Maya, but there are plugins that are like auto face recognitions that will do auto lip syncing. So really, why we're making these shapes the way we are, like we could actually just say, no, I'm not going to do it that way, Toon Boom. I'm going to draw whatever mouth shapes I want. You know, I'm going to do the vizzings or whatever. The reason we do it this way is Toon Boom will recognize these drawings as those sounds. And then there's a way we can do an automatic lip sync with these shapes. Now, I have never gotten that to work great. But if you ever want to try it, you have to do them and label them this way. Yes?
In Toon Boom, you know how when you go to like you get a little image swap where you have multiple drawings and you switch between them?
Mm-hmm.
If you were to switch to one of the mouths and you're like, oh, that doesn't look right because the character turned its head, and you edit, does it edit that entire drawing? Or does that just stay with whatever frame you put it on?
Yes, when you're switching back and forth, you're switching to an existing drawing. If you go back and change any of that drawing, it will change it in every time you have used that drawing. If you needed to be slightly different, probably what you would do is create a new drawing, like another extra mouth, and make an altered version of that one to switch to it. So, Okay, so I'm kind of laying the groundwork here of what we're doing. So this is actually going to walk you through most of it, right? Let me see. Protection. So I'm actually going to kind of keep this open to remind me on some of this stuff. But first things first, I'm going to go through here and make all those different mouth drawings on my mouth, right? So I'm going to unlock it. I'm going to zoom in here close, and actually, I'll kind of keep this temporarily open here, and start drawing these. So I'm going to use so I'm probably going to eventually end up using that mouth that I have here, but just to make this cleaner, I'm just going to create a new mouth drawing underneath here. Actually, what I'll do is just duplicate this one. Duplicate selected layer, just in case I want to come back to this. And then I'll hide that one, and we'll call this lip sync mouth. And I'm doing that just so I'm not really messing up anything from the previous rig. And what I want to do on this drawing is I'm actually just going to erase all of that that I have on here. So let's go ahead and erase out my current mouth. That work? It did. Okay. So to kind of look at this list again, the first one I need is that MBPH for A, right? So let's look at that really quick here. Where are we at? So I'm going to do her version of that. I'm going to do it with the pen. Let's see, is this? Oh. Yep. Yes. Okay, that's a good question. I'm using the rig that I just did the walk cycle with. You don't have to. If you have another character you're wanting to do, if you're wanting to, maybe you're tired of that character, maybe you weren't happy with how it worked out, or you're just wanting to try something fresh. Again, this animation you only have to do from like the waist up. So if you want to do a completely new character for this, you're welcome to do that and just do a more like simplified rig for this. I'm going to use the same one just because I want to see how useful I can make her. Why is that not working? I have a feeling I'm doing something silly here. Huh. Seems like it is working. Oh, I bet I know what's happening. I bet that new mouth layer that I'm drawing on, I bet that it is mapped in behind the head somehow. So when I duplicated it, let's see where it's at. So that's the hidden mouth. Here's the lip sync mouth. I want this one to be pretty far forward. So I'll just grab that one and move it all the way up there. There we go. So this should work now. So to start with, I'm going to do sort of my neutral MBP, right? I'm going to go pretty simple with this. Maybe something like that. All right. So that's mouth A. Is this where I label it? Nope. Okay, it's not. Okay. So, what I'm going to do to make my additional mouths is I'm just going to add a new drawing for it, right? Now, I usually kind of work my way backwards on some of these. So there we go, on this lip. I'm just gonna kind of go through here and do them periodically throughout my timeline, right? So I'll go forward 2, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new drawing, but I can always reuse part of this, right? So if I'm going to go from this widest open mouth, right? I could do it first, and then I could kind of trim parts off of it to make B and C, right? Or I can go the other way too. Right, let's see what works here. Yeah. But I'm going to go ahead and create a new drawing. I'm okay with some of this stuff I have here, but I'm still going to do one completely new. So I'll just do a blank drawing. So I can kind of see where my previous mouth was, though, I'll turn on my onion skinning. There we go. So I'm going to do the probably the widest open version of this. So just kind of looking at that, I think I could actually go bigger than that. I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of that, use my envelope tools to kind of stretch this a little bit. I may need her to be kind of loud at some point. There. So now we should be able to see the difference between those. Maybe that went a little big. There. Kind of quickly, I'll go through and color these as well. You know what? I do need a tongue in there, I guess. So let's do very subtle tongue. I probably ought to trim some of this miscellaneous stuff out of here. No. Okay. So I'll go ahead and fill some of this. I'm not going to worry too much about doing this on other layers right now. Fill the teeth. The mouth. Glad I got that on. Tool properties. I'll turn that no close gap. And then I probably have to create a new color for there we go. Okay, so this is my widest mouth. I want to go ahead and get those others as well. So let's see here. I'm just going to make a new drawing of this, but I'm going to do this right here, create a duplicate of that drawing. So now I have a second version of this drawing. It's just a little, it's a copy of it. And so what I can do now is I could go in here and let's try this. I wonder if I can do this. Just erase streak out of it. Move that together. So again, I'm just making some changes to that original drawing now. brushing there. Oh. And if I turn on my onion scanning, I can kind of see where the previous one was. Able to get something works a little bit better, right? So hopefully this is lining up a little bit now more with this one, right? And then I want one that's almost closed. Actually, I may make this one even a little bit smaller just to help with that. Okay. And then that last one, I want to do sort of barely open at all, but I also want it to be close to what I have here on my first drawing. So maybe what I'm going to do is go out here, and I want to switch over really quickly to my first drawing. So you'll see I'm on drawing number 3. I can go back to drawing number 1. And so now that's drawing number 1, but if I click this button right here, I'm just going to create a duplicate of drawing number 1, that's drawing number 4. Right? And so what I can do now is get some sort of combination between my last open mouth and this mouth. Right? So I could do like going in here, getting a very subtly open mouth. Let's see, like that. And then I'm going to do some more drawing on here to sort of finish that up, right? A little bit more like that. Actually, I'm going to try that. I'll go ahead and erase some of that stuff there. Use my fill bucket to fill inside there. And maybe just to get a little bit of teeth in there, I'll add a very faint upper line. It's a little big. Something like that. So now you can see, as we step through here, all the shapes that I have. So I have my A, my B, my C, my D. Right. Now I can change these around a little bit, but I'm just going to kind of keep doing the rest of those. If y'all have questions at any point too, like wave me down. I may not be noticing. I think my X, I can kind of substitute my A in there for it. I may make some changes for it. So that would be a quick one. I'm probably just going to do 3 custom drawings on this. So that E shape is sort of the O. And so you can exaggerate this however you want to. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to do a completely new one, right? And just so I can see it in context there, I'm going to do sort of the larger O. That's terrible. And again, I'll go ahead and paint bucket that one. So the ooh shape is a little bit more tight, right? A little bit smaller. So I could duplicate that and do a new one, but I think I'm actually just going to do a completely new drawing entirely, and do it a little bit more like, you can exaggerate this as much as you want, right? You can do like something like that. Fill that in now. Sorry. And then the last thing we need is this F shape. Now, they have it kind of puckered F. I'm going to do something completely new on this one. So I'll do a completely new drawing. And I'm going to kind of dial in on this drawing just so I can see it. I may be able to just reuse one of these. I may be able to reuse like this one. Yeah, 4. Let's try that. I'm going to make a duplicate of that drawing. So remember, my drawing number 7 now is empty, so I may come back to that. And so I can make this more of that F shape if I wanted to. Take my eraser, take out a bunch of this stuff. I wonder if I can just select some of that. Yeah. So I can get that very noticeable top teeth, I'll do that. And then go and fill color that real quick. And then for me, you can usually get a lot of this out of just sort of like some pinch lines. So let's try something like that. I may go ahead and do just a little bit of warping on this to push it up a little bit. There we go. Just to accentuate that just a little bit more. Okay, and then the last drawing I had, number 7, that was empty. What I may do is just copy the elements I have out of here, Control C, and then on drawing number 7, I'll just paste those in place and make a slightly different version of that. It's a little more neutral. A little less of a smile, a little more of a neutral mouth. Now you can make whatever extra mouths you want from here on out. Like this is yours. These are just the the 8 that I need, right? So I want to show you another tool in here, because how I've been flipping through all of these is just to go to any of these. This is kind of a neat trick here. I'm just going to highlight all of these and delete them, and then just go back to the beginning here. And I know that, don't crash, what are you doing? There we go. And so you'll see that I'm exposing drawing 7, but all of those drawings are still there, right? So I'm actually doing this just so I'll have kind of a neutral starting point. I was just using these drawings here to fix that, or to create those. Now, if we want to see all these drawings, we have this library here where we can flip through them, but there's actually a better tool for this now, and it's kind of new. It's actually just in this version of it, or starting with this version of it. I think we're up to 16 now. I don't remember which version we have here. But under Windows, there's this drawing substitutions menu. And so suddenly you can see all of our drawings, right? We can see each of them, and we can just click through here to substitute whichever one of those we want, right? Now this is gonna make lip syncing way easier. So I'm gonna go ahead and go ahead and save this file, save as a new version, and I'm gonna call this rig 2, okay. And I'm going to import my audio. Import sound. Find my audio clip here. Audio. I'm thinking, I don't know, which one did y'all like? Did you like any of them?
Time Machine.
Time Machine? That's the one I like too. That's the one I just made that one like 5 minutes before class. So we'll do a little snippet of that. So when I import Time Machine, you'll see that somewhere in here, I get this Time Machine audio, right? Now, this is our audio track, and if I hit play, you can't hear anything. If I turn on this, you should be able to hear it, I think, when I hit play.
You know, I feel like in the future someone's going to build a time machine to come back and stop.
But if you want to be able to hear it while you're scrubbing, like if I'm just doing this, I can't hear it, right? You can hit this S button here.
Like in the future someone's going to be like in the future.
Right, so you can scrub through it and hear it individually. Now, the manual way of doing this is just to go through here and dial in the shapes we need. So Windows, I would do my drawing substitutions. I'll probably go ahead and stub that in there, choose my lip sync layer, and just go through here and say,
You know, I
have a question.
yep.
I've got a bunch of extra drawing substitution things. How do I delete the extra ones and like erase them?
I don't know. I'm not really, I guess we could do it, is it this right here? Tools library. I honestly don't know. You'd think that there would be an easy way of doing that. Usually what I do is if I have some extras, I just sort of save those and don't, like I'll fill those in if I want them. Like if you find a new mouth you want, I'll just go erase whatever's in that one I don't like and just put in the new thing I want. So, but I know that's not an ideal answer. I think there is a way of deleting an exposure. So this is, let's see if I can do edit. I don't know. Let me look into that though, because that's a good question. Okay, so I'm going to undo these. Undid one too many times. Undo a few of these exposures. I'm going to go to my Time Machine line there and go to Layer Properties. Okay, so here's where we can do that auto lip sync thing, right? These are the ones we need. It wants us to map those in there. So if I go to my map, here we go. I'll do this again. Line, destination layer. And then
How did you get that window?
it is actually under the layer properties of our time machine, or whatever your audio clip is named. So we can generate a detection here. So in the time machine sound layer, the options layer, properties. Mouth. Okay. So we have to do this in the I shouldn't test it. So yeah, that's what I thought. I think there's a way I can name them. Yes. Is it here? It is. Okay, sorry. It took me a second to remember what I was doing here. So my drawing substitutions, I'm going to go to my lip sync. I'm going to go ahead and go to here, and you'll see that my lip sync mouth out here to parameters. You see what that says? 1. I'm going to type in A. So now, what? Created a new A. That's not what I wanted. Okay. Well, we can do it kind of the hard way too if we want to. So our mouth lip sync is defined differently. So how they were doing it was A, B, C, D. What we really have is, for that A, B, C, D, we have 1, 4, 3, 2, right? So what I can do is I can go to my audio layer here, and under mapping, I will go 1, 4, 3, 2. So this is going to be helpful for you if you're referring to this link, and that's one of the reasons I gave it to you, is so you can keep looking at what they want you to define these shapes as. So this is how Toon Boom is going to define A, B, C, D. For us on our animation, I drew them in the wrong order, so I'm defining them as 1, 4, 3, 2. There's a way you can rename each of those drawings. I'm just drawing a blank right now, and so rather than make you watch me dig through all that, I'm just going to number them this way. So I can go back to my, okay, we got that. I can go back to my lip sync. I can see that 5, 6, 7, and 8, I think. So I think it goes 5, 6, 8, 7 is my next order. Look at that and make sure. 5, 6, 8, 7. So 5, 6, 8, 7. So I'm gonna go back to time machine, get a map. 1, 4, 2, 5, 6, 8, 7. It's not drawing that I want to use. It is lip sync. Switch layer, time machine, hit OK. There we go. So just by doing that map, what I should get, you'll notice, is it starts dividing up that audio into lengths, or into the frame. So it automatically detected all of that and gave us our correct animation, or what it's going to try to give us as our correct animation.
You know, I feel like in the future someone's going to build a time machine to come back and stop.
Stop. Yeah. So it's not right on. It's actually pretty bad. But it's got a few things right. So one of the benefits of this is I can, and also my stop frame is only on frame 100. So I can extend this out to the end of my animation. But for right now, that'll work. So what I can do now is I can go in there and fix the parts that didn't work. So she said, so I feel like even though you can't hear it very well, I would expect her mouth to be kind of wide there. So I would go back to my lip sync. And I'm just going to go ahead and leave that one as wide as well. So that's the F sound. So I can go.
You know, I feel like in the future someone's going to build a time machine to come back and stop.
So we're able to get a little better, right? So my 2 cents, I don't really like the auto lip sync. I feel like when I do the auto lip sync, I just spend my entire time trying to fix the things that it did wrong. And then the amount of time that I can go through and do this whole detect and lining up everything, I could have already lip synced it, right? But that's me. What I would encourage you to do is try it, right? The other thing is you're going to realize that there are sounds that or mouth shakes that you're wanting to make that are not on that list of 8 shapes, right? Like, let's say if your character like screams or something, right? They get scared, they're like, ah! You may want to do like some sort of crazy, like the tongue waggling, like in the S shape, like, and June Boom's not going to know where to put that, right? It's not going to know how to interpret, so you're going to want to dial in some extras, right? And be able to create some extras. And so that's where I would, like, you can use this auto lip sync to get you a start, but it's really probably just going to be a start. I've never seen it get it that close. It's going to get the very noticeable, very distinctive sounds, but to me it really seems like otherwise it's just opening and closing the jaw whenever it hears a noise. So this will get you pretty close, or get you a starting point, but it's not going to be the final thing. That's going to drive me crazy until I remember how to do that. Is it here? Maybe. Anyway. Okay. Yes.
So, I missed the part. How did you convert, after you had drawn all the mouths, how did you put them into the drawing substitutions?
After I've drawn them all you have to do is choose the layer that they're on and open your drawing substitutions menu, and they should all be there.
Okay, so how did you clear out the,
Oh, just getting rid of all of these?
yeah.
So one of the things, I mean, you could do it a couple of different ways. You could just highlight all of it, hit delete.
Oh, and they're still there?
Yeah, so all the substitutions are there. And then I could just dial in like the first one and hit F5 to extend it. And really what I have is, like this layer with all of those drawings on it are always there. It's just which one am I exposing on the timeline at that point, right? And so I just have to choose one to be exposing. I think if I choose nothing, it clears out that entire line. But if I choose one, it's got something in there, right? And really all you're doing is just swapping in and out. You may have a whole host of drawings in there that you never use for this animation, and it'll still kind of keep them stored within that layer to dial in and out. Now the other thing to remember is, a couple of other things to remember, is that we have the ability to still animate this entire layer.
You know, I feel like...
So let's say if we have a, I'm going to mute this right now. Let's say I had a character who was going, oh, right? Like they got this long drawn out O shape, right? One of the things I could do is I could go ahead and dial in my O, right? And I could go to my mouse peg, and I can move my mouse peg. I can scale my mouse peg, right? And I can even rotate it, skew it, whatever, right? And I could do a translation on that. Something like this. And then on this frame, switch to this, and then continue to move it, right? And so what I get now is something like, right? So you can, that was a very rough example, but you can do all sorts of stuff with moving these around with the peg as well, right? And I think that there's some interesting things you can do with that, because we also have the option for this, you know, skewing it from side to side. You can really change the shape of some of these mouth shapes if you wanted to, right? Like we want this drawing here. I can make him look a little like goofier, like a little bit like if I wanted to just mess around with this, right? And then whenever you're needing a very specific shape that's not there, so for example, that oh thing I just did, right? You'll notice that there was kind of a hard transfer between this drawing to this drawing, right? So maybe what I would do is I would go ahead and dial in this drawing there, and then for this one, I would just make a new one, right? A completely new blank drawing. And on this, I would try to do some form of in-between to make that work a little bit better, right? Like, so I get this, right? So is this making sense? Okay. Now, I'll point out one more thing. All I've really talked about so far is mouth, right? Because that's probably the part that is most confusing, the part you haven't actually done anything with before. A couple of things to notice is that facial animation is a mix of different things. I should give my character eyebrows, because eyebrows is one of them, right? Like what you're doing with your eyebrows is very distinctive and it adds to what you're doing with your mouth, right? So for example, if you smile, right, that's a completely different, that's a different read on that smile. If your eyebrows are way up, you're like, oh yeah, I guess that is a pretty donkey. Like whatever, like there's like, yeah, sure, like you're placating someone, right? Or you're skeptical and you're just being nice, right? Versus if you smile and you have like your brows down, and it's very devious, right? And that's all just your eyebrows changing what your mouth is doing, right? I mean, your mouth is still doing the same thing. It's the combination of your eyebrows and your mouth that's going to give an emotion, right? Your eyes also do a lot, like if you're thinking really hard, maybe you squint, or if you're, a very interesting thing is, your eyes will actually go in different directions depending on what you're thinking about. You can actually look this up. I can never remember them off the top of my head. I always have to look them up. Eye direction. This. Yeah, here we go. So this is involuntary, something you do. But if you are looking up and to one direction, you're trying to like reconstruct something. Visual, let's see, this is up and to the left, or to the, I guess the character's right. That's probably going to be like you're trying to remember what something looks like, right? So there's just a lot of different, there's probably a better way of understanding. Yeah, here, this clicker is dreaming up an image or recalling an image. So the direction your eyes are looking will actually tell you whether you're making something up or not, right? You're remembering something, you're making something up, right? And I know that sounds crazy, but it's actually what's going on in your brain is triggering this involuntary eye movement, right? It's like your eyes, what your eyes are seeing distracts you, so your brain tries to turn them off by pointing them in some other direction while it's doing its work. And so there's lots of little things about your eyes that are interesting. The other thing is our eyes never really stop moving, right? Like, and they never move slowly. Like it's almost impossible to try to like start looking at one side of the room and then slowly let your eyes like drift. Our eyes don't do that. They do this. They do this like dart, right? And it's because they're tracking devices, right? I'm tracking from one person's face to another person's face to another person's face, and they do that in these quick sort of like twitches. So that's another thing to add in there. And I think all of this I've been talking so far about is the face. The face is secondary action, right? When it comes to acting, your character's motion, your character's body is the primary action. So all of that is kind of included, right? If they're frustrated, maybe they're doing something with their arms like this, right? A couple of things, like I'm not going to try to cram an entire animation acting lecture in here, but something to consider is just things that your character is doing, right? Humans aren't actually very creative in our expressions. If you watch any politician, like they will do the same thing over and over again for a long, long time with their hands. And if you watched an animation that had that, you'd be like, this is so boring. So you should be a little like creative with your gestures. And one of the first ones you're going to think of is this. Right? I am going to go to the store because I think I need some medicine for my tummy, right? And that's called indicating. Like that is a very simple and overused gesture by animators. Considering we reserve this in real life for very specific things, right? If I'm like, that has to be on my desk right now, right? It's a very direct thing, right? And if you actually point at somebody, it's almost a threat, right? So so be careful on how you use that and like try to come up with other things. I have a tendency to gesture in other ways, right? Like if I was talking about a student and I was like, Andrew here, maybe I would just do this sort of like hand throw gesture toward Andrew, right? And we very rarely say, hi, or like point to ourselves, right? Sometimes I'll be like, I, or, well, you may do something like that, right? The other little thing with acting to watch out for is, even though humans really do this a lot, if you use both hands to do the same thing, or both legs to do the same thing, that feels a little robotic and uncreative. They call it twinning, right? You're doing the same thing on both sides of your body. What I would try to do is break that up a little bit. If your character has to do this, instead maybe make them do it like this, right? Just sort of break that up to make it a little more creative. So, all of this is just to say, a lip sync acting shot is not your character standing still and its mouth moving, right? You need to add the body expressing stuff. I think that this is something that would be worth doing some research on for style, because talking is something like long talking clips are why limited animation is so affordable, right? Why people can do an episode of Teen Titans Go so cheaply is because there are long sections where the characters are doing nothing but talking to each other, right? So look up an episode of something. I was watching one the other day. Let's watch Johnny Test. So just an episode of Johnny Test.
Grammarly does more.
I'm gonna mute that. You'll notice like these long stretches of time where they're just sitting here talking and hitting these poses, right? Now, isn't it? The hard part about this is that you didn't notice it when you were watching the show, right? Like, and this is actually happening in probably almost every show that you watch, right? This is how they're delivering. This is how they're delivering. What's the word I'm looking for? Plot to you, right? They're delivering plot through dialogue, and rather like these little gestures keep you engaged, keep you remembering that the characters are alive, keep you in the story, while they deliver like, now we're gonna pour this water monster on. I have no idea what's going on in this shot. While they're explaining this show, look at something like what is that? All the different types of creatures that are in the. I love that show too. I think it's on Cartoon Network. There's Foster's, but no, it's the ones like sometimes it's 3D, sometimes it's 2D. It's got a little bit. Gumball, yeah. I love like Foster's is good, but like just looking at some of this stuff, like. They're just standing there talking to each other. And like this is some stuff to look at based off of your character's style, right? So like what is the equivalent and what is the amount of motion you think you might need in order to achieve that style, right? I know people every time I pull this one up, people get really like groany. But I actually like the way Teen Titans. I like how Teen Titans Go looks, right? I'm not saying it's good, but I also recognize that a lot of people's hatred toward it has to do with the fact that they liked another show, right? Not that like this one I think is actually really good examples of animation for this style. And you get a lot of like this is a good example, right? Like it is an illustration that they held for about 10 seconds where several characters are on screen, they move a little bit, right? But like these two here, like they barely move at all during whole sections of this. Like Robin does like one quick gesture, and then occasionally there's some blinks, right? But if you're watching this, you never go, hey, did they pause this? Like, what happened? Right? And a lot of that is because the animation style is quick transitions of poses that they hit and hold, right? Not these slow transitions up that like has overshoot, right? Like, they're practically doing a really detailed storyboard, right? So I think you can look through a lot of different stuff, whatever it is that you like or dislike, to see how that relates to your My Little Pony. Everybody loves ponies, right? How does this relate to whatever your character is, and how can you interpret that acting, right? Because they're all going to kind of have something similar. Right? These move a little bit more and have a little bit more overshoot, a little bit more ease and stuff like that. Yes.
Would you recommend animating the mouth, like the lip sync stuff first, or more of the other actions first, like the body, the face, like?
You know, if you put like a room full of animators together and you ask them that, 50% would tell you one way and 50% would tell you the other. My preference, I usually do the body first, or at least a rough version of the body first. And the reason for that is because I want to know where my character is going to be moving quickly, because I don't want to lose a very specific mouth shape in that motion, right? Like, if there's a very specific enunciation that the character has to make, I can then lip sync it to where I can anticipate that more in the mouth or something like that. But it's a little bit of a back and forth. I usually do like the blocking plus pass of the body, then I do the lip sync, then I do the polish of the body. So, other questions, comments? Anybody planning on dropping this class because I brought up Teen Titans Go? Someday we're going to have just a day where we discuss that. Every time I bring it up, it's like everybody's like, ah. And I get it.
You know, Weird Al was in Teen Titans Go.
Who was?
Weird Al.
See? I love Weird Al.
I'm one of those people that really like the original source material, and in interviews, the creators of Teen Titans Go have said that they didn't touch an episode.
Actually, that's incorrect.
Is it?
Yeah, they said that as a joke.
Okay.
Correct.
I took the bait.
It's how we started.
Oh my God. That's hilarious. She's actually wearing the original Teen Titans t-shirt right now.
They had a crossover.
See, I never watched the original.
It was really good.
I just like the design of like the new one. Like I like how it looks, but I recognize it's two different audiences too. Teen Titans Go is like aimed at much younger students or kids. Okay, questions, comments, concerns that are non-Teen Titans related? Yes.
Is it possible you can reference this between the video
That's a good question. Like how you can import in a video
and
sequence?
you can like look at it side by side or whatever. Yeah.
I'm sure you can. So I think what you would probably, it's going to be a little clunky to get it in there or to figure out the way you want to get it in there. But what you can do is you can import images and you can choose a sequence. Right? So if I browse to, let me see if I have something up here. I'm sure I do. Greg in class. I think I can import every image. So I grab those three and create a single layer named. So it's going to get a little clunky. So you would want to make sure that your image sequence was at 24 frames per second. But then what you would do is you would import all of your images, and it would import one image into each frame or each exposure of the layer you're importing it in. I would probably import it as either original bitmap or Toon Boom bitmap, and then put a peg on it so you can shrink it down. It may slow down your Toon Boom just a little bit, though. But yeah, there should be a way you can do it similarly. I don't think that there's a way to import just directly video, but I think you could do an image sequence.
So it's like how we set up our exposures to different drawings and we do that in the picture.
Say one more time.
Like on each frame we have a different drawing.
Mm-hmm.
It would do that to the pictures.
Yes. Yeah, I think you would do that with each of your images in the image sequence of the video. So you would go into Premiere, export that video as an image sequence at 24 frames per second, and then import all of those JPEGs or PNGs into a animation layer, and each of them would be a different exposure on that layer. I think is how that would work. You gotta be careful though, like what you choose here. I would test it out because you can do a single layer numbered, or you can create a layer based on it. But I think there's another thing in here where if you're not careful, you would import a new layer for every drawing, and so then you would end up with 300 layers, and that would be a mess. So,
I don't know how many people ask, but like, is that like a valid thing to do?
yeah. I mean, I think especially if you're.
Cheating. I don't want to cheat. I just want to do it, but I want to help.
It's not cheating.
Using
Well, I mean,
reference is not cheating. Don't listen to what people say.
it's perfectly fine. So what I would say is, and I didn't really say this when I was picking out, or when I was mentioning taking out the audio. I would be careful about using audio from another animation, and I would definitely be careful about referencing animation, action, or acting as your reference, right? Like if there's a very neat way that a character does something in an animation you like, use that as an example, but get your like body mechanics reference from something live action, right? Just because it's kind of like a photocopy of it, right? Like they've already trimmed out the parts they thought that were not important, but you maybe would think that some of those things that were in the original reference was important. And so that's what I would base most of your action and acting on. But yeah, if you want to go out there and record yourself acting to the line and bring that out in this video reference, like that's absolutely valid. To give you a really, I think this is actually really interesting. Snow White was rotoscoped. Like Snow White was filmed, and then the majority of it they drew over the film. And you can tell, like, you can.
Well, not the seven dwarfs.
Well, not the seven dwarfs, right? Yeah, but all of Snow White and the Prince, and you can tell that they just moved differently. And they did that because they were like, we got to get this thing done, like, quickly. Bring in some actors, let's film them and rotoscope them. And they were also like, it was still kind of new to that production. And nobody ever goes, Snow White didn't count, they cheated, right? Usually rotoscoped animation has a little bit of a boring look to it though. And so that's why people you can't exaggerate rotoscoping as again, rotoscoping is just drawing over every frame exactly. So.
Is it possible, if that's what you're doing now, maybe like finish a scene, to just be like, rather than like do all of those frames and say to have somebody stand, it's like, let's make it move faster, let's take out all these other pictures, just put it in less.
Yeah, speed it up. Or, you can probably do a little bit of that changing of the speed in Premiere. That way, your inner sequence you get out of there is a little more accurate. By taking out frames, you're going to lose some of that easing in and easing out. Some of the spacing is going to get messed up. But yeah, you can do it. And I mean, there's actually nothing wrong with shooting reference of yourself or shooting reference of whoever, and using your proportions to get those three body masses that you would use to drive your character. I think a lot of people do pencil tests of stuff even when they're doing rigs. Like they'll do a very quick, like frame by frame stick figure version of it, and then use their rigs to hit those drawings, right? I feel like I'm trying to cram a lot into this, but I'm also trying to not make this just a repeat of the character animation class for those of you who had character animation class. Because we pack a lot into that class too, and like I don't want it to be like, okay, today I'm going to do that lecture on acting, except this time it's in 2D, right? So I want to focus a little bit more on the stuff that is specific to 2D, and a lot of that is in the style of the animation and in the techniques that we would use for Toon Boom. So, how y'all feeling after? I feel like that walk cycle rigging project left a bad taste in your mouth of the idea of rigging in Toon Boom. Am I right there?
I think just where it was the first go.
So that might be something to consider, is that maybe on this one, take a simple character, like super simplistic, something you know you can draw and create easily. And maybe try creating a simpler character to do your lip sync with, right? And that way you don't have to worry about all the little rigging hiccups you had. You could just have something that's much more primitive, or not primitive necessarily, not necessarily like a stick figure character, but something that's a little bit more simplistic. That way you don't have to fight with a rig. You can focus on the acting. And I have a feeling that like the second character you rig is way more fun than the first character you rig. And it's because you didn't know what to be expecting when you were creating your character. And when you're creating your second character, you will. And you'll be thinking, oh, I don't think this tip is going to turn correctly. I don't think that this is the right place for a pivot point, or I've broken these layers up correctly. The second time around, it works a lot better. And yeah, so, but give it a shot. Again, this one you are welcome to do in frame-by-frame animation if you want to.
Thank you.
But what I would say is, like, what I would consider doing though is still doing limited animation on the mouth, right? Doing a mouth face layer that's separate, right? Just because you'll be able to reuse a lot of stuff on this. And it's really hard to frame-by-frame draw lip sync animation. So, all right. Questions, comments? 16, is that right? Yeah. All right. Okay. Rest of the class is yours. I'll go ahead and stop the video, upload it. I will say that link that I've given you has a lot about this lip sync stuff that'll help walk you through it. But there's also several videos up on the Toon Boom page that goes through this entire process. If you just look up Toon Boom lip sync, you will find 100 tutorials on this. So let me go ahead and I actually want to save this. And then I'll stop this.